to round 12 coverage here at Grand Prix Memphis. The format is standard, and the participants this round are Eric Froehlich, the Pro Tour Hall of Famer, and Andrew Tenjum, the SCG Open Series standout, right?
Yeah, Andrew Tenjum has been winning a lot of matches of Magic over the last couple of years.
And he is playing Grixis Energy, and Kik gets the first non-land permanent on the board with the crucial search for Azcanta in this matchup that may seem a little control on control. Is the Grixis Energy a control deck? Is that how you would describe this?
Yeah, the Grixis Energy is definitely a controlling deck. In a matchup like this, Tenjum will likely characterize himself as the aggressor, but what's really nice about Tenjum's draw here is that he had that turn 2 search for Azcanta, and with that turn 2 search for Azcanta, even though he's going to be applying pressure on Eric and requiring Eric to have answers for his threats, that search in the middle to late game is going to give him a great deal of inevitability.
Yeah, you see Eric found a place for his spot removal to land, takes out a glint sleeve siphoner with Fatal Push. And both players are going to play. I think we're going to see a lot of draw go in this matchup. Yeah,
and Eric really needs to find himself a Field of Ruin before Search for Azcanta can be activated multiple times, because Azcanta the Sunken Ruin is essentially a win condition for Andrew Tenjum in a matchup like this.
So it doesn't actually win the game itself, but it's just going to get you to all your key pieces. So here we see Essence Scatter now is going to take down a Whirler Virtuoso, and the graveyard continues to fill up for Andrew Tenjum.
And those of you who have played a lot of Drago might see this turn as maybe an opportunity. Oh, wow. That's
Eric
perfect.
Froehlich also has his own search for Azcanta. He's like, let's see who finds it first. Why don't we?
And now both players incentivized to some degree to be binning cards aggressively with Search for Azcanta, even if it's a card that they might want a little bit.
Another attempt at Whirler Virtuoso for Andrew Tenjum. But that's going to get dissolved. Disallowed, sorry.
Yeah, Whirler Virtuoso is a pretty good threat against control decks in this format.
There is the Field of Ruin for Eric Froehlich. So not only is he threatening to get to Azcanta the Sunken Ruin nearly as quickly as Andrew, but he also has an answer for Andrew's transformed search.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big advantage for Eric. Andrew playing 3 colors, it's much harder for
probably
him to fit
can't
cards
squeeze the Field of Ruin
like
in.
Field of Ruin in his deck, exactly.
Yeah, we haven't seen his deck list yet, but I'm going to assume it's a little tricky for him to squeeze a colorless mana into his deck. Although that seems like he might have a couple.
It's definitely a possibility. No, he does not have any Field of Ruins. So here now, Azcanta the Sunken Ruin on the table here for Andrew Tenjum.
And that is going to immediately get answered by Field of Ruin. Wonder if that's why it's called that. It's a Field of Sunken Ruins. Oh my gosh, and Andrew's going to whiff on his Sunken Ruins.
Yeah, and Eric's definitely very happy about that. Let's see, that's one nice thing about having Azcanta the Sunken Ruin is that even when your opponent uses their Field of Ruin to destroy it, you usually get 1 activation out of it. And now Eric's going to get an opportunity here to untap and have shields completely down. Andrew Tenjum just with a lone mountain untapped. Though, in a matchup like this, Eric might be incentivized to wait until he can use Scarab God and have an activation all in one turn.
Okay, well, there's Moment of Craving. Again, Eric's just looking for ways to deploy these spot removal cards from his hand.
Yeah.
And now he is going to be able to transform his search this turn if he'd like. He puts Commit to Memory into his yard, gets another land. By the way, he also has a Torrential Gearhulk in his hand, so if he wanted to just say, hey, let's both draw 7 new cards, but I'm going to get to untap with my mana, I'll be able to do that.
Yeah,
but instead he's going to bide his time. He's going to play Glimmer of Genius here.
Just grinding card advantage upward. Eric looks to be in a pretty good position in this game. The most important thing in matchups like this is to hit land drops.
Keep playing lands. Yeah, look at this now. At the end of this turn, Eric is going to be able to cast Glimmer of Genius and activate Escont of the Sunken Ruin on the same turn.
And just grinding out huge advantages in that way.
So there you see Andrew Tenjum play Supreme Will, use it as sort of an impulse. And yeah, here we go. There's Glimmer of Genius for Eric Froehlich. Waits to see if Andrew has anything to say about that. And he's going to Torrential Gear Hulk, flashing back his... attempt to, anyway, flashing back his Supreme Will. But Commit to Memory is going to stick that card a little further down in Andrew's deck. A problem to be dealt with later from Eric Froehlich's deck.
Yeah, and one nice thing about Eric using Commit there to deal with the Torrential Gear Hulk is that Torrential Gear Hulk costs 6 mana, and now Eric likely has just an abundance of answers in his hand, counterspells even. So
his own Torrential Gear Hulk even.
Yeah, when Andrew taps another 6 mana and goes for that, Eric will, be able to gain even more advantage by potentially activating Escant of the Sunken Ruin while also dealing with the Gear Hulk.
Here's a Glint Thief Siphoner. By the way, he also has another Field of Ruin, so he can just he can shuffle that away if he wants.
That's true. Field of Ruin is not a May on the shuffle ability, as many cards are that are similar to it, and that's something that comes up somewhat frequently.
So Eric Froehlich's going to find himself an Essence Scatter at the end of the turn with Escant of the Sunken Ruin.
And that
fistful of cards here for Eric Froehlich. Wow. You've got an abundance of resources when you could use the Vraska's Contempt on a Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
Yeah, with Escant of the Sunken Ruin flipped in on the battlefield, Eric will be happy to exchange one-for-ones as much as they're offered.
So you described this card flipped as a win condition. Yes. And so now we get to see what you meant by that, because Eric is got the last Sunken Ruin still in play here. And so Eric is on upkeep playing Torrential Gear Hulk.
Yeah, and here Andrew Tenjum going for a Torrential Gear Hulk of his own, but he knows about the Essence Scatter that Eric found.
Wow, and that's going to be game for Andrew Tenjum. He's like, I don't really need to play anymore.
Yeah.
He's like,
the words of the prophets were written on the subway wall, It's
you've got a million cards. We don't need to keep going here. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way for him to possibly win that game from that spot.
Certainly not once he picks his cards up, right?
Oh, definitely not.
But yeah, no, he is just in an impossible to dig his way out of situation there.
Yeah, perhaps if he was playing against somebody who he wasn't particularly familiar with, he might think, oh, they might tap their mana wrong in a certain turn, they might give me a window where I might be able to fight my way back into this game. But he's playing against a Hall of Famer. He's playing against, one of the greatest people to ever touch a Magic card, and he recognizes that Eric Froehlich is not going to give him that opportunity.
It's very funny. I was talking to Athena Froehlich yesterday. We saw her early on playing the Blue-Red Flyers deck. That she said she'd talked to Eric about the deck and, got a little feedback from him on how to build it and what to do with it. And I was like, how's the deck? And she's like, oh, it's fun. She's like, Eric didn't play it, so I'm assuming it wasn't the best choice for this format.
Yeah, I think Athena was more interested in playing a deck that fit her play
style. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. She's like, no, Eric's a little bit more no-nonsense when it comes to deck selection here for a tournament. Eric's not someone who necessarily, he's not misfiring any bullets here. He's like, if I'm going to go up to the tournament, I want to have the best deck. And he decided that deck is blue-black control.
Yeah, he had so much fun playing in the mocks on Magic Online that he decided to book a trip here. He wasn't even planning on coming here originally. I had the opportunity to work with Athena in Toronto 2 weekends ago. She was like, I guess we're going to Memphis. Eric really likes the standard format. And she was excited to play standard too. It's pretty funny. Listen to her talk about it. This standard format, though, is very much a wide open field. We've seen crazy decks. The decks that were expected to show up did show up, but there are a lot of weird ducks out there.
There's a Slippery Scoundrel deck at the top. There's a blue-white Auras deck near the top tables. It might have lost last round, so it may just be out of top 8 contention now, but there's definitely a deck that is putting Curious Obsession on a Slippery Scoundrel and going to town.
Jerry Thompson has actually been championing that deck on Magic on the internet over the last week or so, and
playing SRAM.
Yeah, Jerry's not the type of guy to talk about an Auras deck.
Yeah.
So maybe he is.
But yeah, playing multiple cartouches, both I think Solidarity and Knowledge, playing SRAM.
And the Cartouche of Solidarity, very good at getting to City's Blessing quickly.
Okay, Andrew Tenjum going back for 6 cards here. He's mulliganing, not happy with what he saw. Give me an idea. Anything you're seeing after sideboarding that Andrew might do to shore up his match against this blue-black control deck from Eric Froehlich?
So Andrew has a couple copies of Duress, which are pretty good here at clearing the way and finding a key card that might be in Eric's hand that could mess with his aggressive game plan. The thing that's weird about Andrew's deck in a matchup like this is that he's used to being the more controlling player in a matchup.
Right.
And when he's playing against the straight blue-black control deck, he has to identify himself as more of an aggressor.
Now he has 2 Glimmer of Genius in his sideboard. Is that a card you bring in here?
Yes, definitely. And the thing that's really nice about bringing in Glimmer of Genius against blue-black control is that it allows you to fight battles on your opponent's end step. And in doing so, you can pass the turn to your opponent with open mana when they have open mana, and you can strand cards in their hand and make them not use their mana as efficiently. And then on their end step, you can use your mana. Oh, and 4 copies of Negate are definitely the big ones here in the sideboard for Andrew Tenjum. Those cards are going to be extremely important. They can counter cards like Vraska's Contempt and Glimmer of Genius that cost more mana than them.
That's maybe as many as 8 cards he can bring in here.
That's true.
Is that something that's possible? Is he's taken out things like Abrade and Fatal Push?
Yeah, there are a lot of cards in his deck that are really underwhelming in a matchup like this.
Speaking of Fatal Push, Clint Sleeve Siphoner meets the same fate it's met every time we've seen someone play it on turn 2. And then there's a sideboard card for Eric Froehlich, Argyll's Bloodfast, card that has done really good work this weekend.
It's a little bit greedy, if you will, but
it is very greedy.
I've seen it win quite a few games in this standard format.
Here we see Andrew now. His Whirl of Virtuoso yields a Thopter token and gets to town attacking Eric Froehlich.
Yeah, and this is really good news for Andrew Tenjum because Eric Froehlich, unable to kill that Whirl of Virtuoso right now. The Whirl of Virtuoso creates 2 bodies, which is going to require 2 cards out of a deck like Eric's to deal with. And Argyll's Bloodfast also requires that you use your life total as a resource. And with the Whirl of Virtuoso attacking Eric Froehlich, it makes it a lot less appealing to just be pumping life into the Argyll's Bloodfast for
Eric's
cards.
already at 13. But that's going to change. He's going to gain some life here unless Andrew has one of those negates we talked about. But how about Supreme Will?
It'll do just as well. He wouldn't use that extra mana anyway.
Eric, of course, doing that at the end of turn. Actually took the hit and then cast the spell.
He wanted to make sure there wasn't a better target on its way.
And Eric is just aggressively bloodfasting here. He's already down to 9. Now has Search for Escanta going online too. So scrying here.
And newer players may be worried
not
about...
scrying, but gets to decide whether or not he wants to keep the card. It's like scrying. All right, yeah, he's down to 7. If he wants to use the Bloodfast, he can go as low as 3 this turn.
And then it'll flip. And that extra mana is really important in a spot like this. Eric's going to need to be casting more than one spell a turn or casting cards like Torrential Gearhulk if he wants to stay in the game.
Essence Scatter for the Siphoner. Such an innocuous-looking card on its face, but pretty powerful in this matchup for Andrew. All right, going to 5 for the Bloodfast. Draws a card.
And now it's an extra land.
Yeah, that's going to transform. If he has a Torrential Gearhulk, he could cast it now.
And one of the things that we discussed about this matchup in Game 1 was how important it is to hit your land drops. And, you know, sometimes it's important. We talk about matchups where it's important that you hit land drop 1 through 6. This is really a matchup where you're at a disadvantage if you miss a land drop and your opponent hits a land drop all the way up to your 9th or 10th land drop.
Sure. Well, we saw Eric Froehlich in Game 1 being able to cast Glimmer of Genius and activate the Sunken Ruin on the same turn and really getting a huge edge there. Okay, now here's Vraska's Contempt. That's going to gain 2 life back for Eric and deal with that pesky Virtuoso. And no more place for Andrew. I mean, this is one of the problems for Andrew's deck, right? If he does bring in, which we think could be as many as 8 cards, his deck does become a little bit more of a deck that you said will play at the end of Eric's turn now. So maybe something like a Glimmer of Genius here.
Yeah, and that's what this looks like.
But Eric is just transformed Escanta into the Sunken Ruin.
Yeah, 2 flipped over lands here for Eric. And it can be very hard to race that temple also, so Eric's life total no longer really in any sort of danger. Now he's cleared all the threats from the other side of the table.
You see a Duress in hand for Eric Froehlich off of his Sunken Ruin. Andrew just passes the turn. Eric wants to know what's going on. He's like, what are you sitting on here exactly? All right, here's a Duress. He's like, all right, I'll show it to you. I've got a Scarab God, I've got an Essence Scatter, I've got a Torrential Gearhulk, and I've got a Vraska's Contempt.
Now, those are some good cards that Andrew Tenjum has in his hand. Unfortunately for him, Eric Froehlich has significantly more cards. And his cards match up pretty nicely and generally cost less mana also. The Essence Scatter in Eric Froehlich's hand matches up particularly well against what Andrew Tenjum is currently working with.
It just leaves Andrew with the arrangement of cards that are going to be the most taxing on his mana to deploy 2 of in one turn.
And the Vraska's Contempt there in Andrew Tenjum's hand. He wants to leave that card in because of how powerful the Scarab God is in a matchup like this.
Here's Scarab God for Andrew. And that's going to get disallowed. Man, and Eric still has enough mana that he's able to go digging for more cards. Finds another Argyl's Bloodfast.
Yeah, just an embarrassment of riches here.
Is he going to play that here?
No, why not?
He can draw a card every time he casts Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah.
He gets enough life to... All right, Glimmer of Genius from Eric Froehlich.
Yeah, so what I was talking about before with the Vraska's Contempt that are still in Andrew Tenjum's deck, it's kind of there's a duality there because you need to keep those in your deck in order to deal with a resolved card like Scarab God, but at the same time having those types of reactive cards in your deck really plays into Eric Froehlich's plan to run you out of resources.
You kind of want to find them later, not sit on them early.
Mm-hmm.
This is just unbelievably grinding from Eric Froehlich. You know, now he finds a negate. What is there a sequence of cards Andrew's able to find here that's able to even just keep up with Eric's hand?
No, see, this is a very similar stage in the game to where Andrew conceded in the first game.
Yeah.
But here it's game 2, and Andrew's down a game. And he still has, 30 minutes to hang out.
And if
it's a good opportunity to play against the Hall of Famer, have a good time.
If he can sneak a Torrential Gearhulk through somewhere.
Yeah.
We saw Andrew's face. He's not having a good time. Andrew is not having... There's a Gonti Lord of Luxury. But Eric is the one with all the cards in his hand, and that's how I describe luxury.
Yes, that is.
In a game of Magic.
That's the luxurious situation that Eric finds himself in right here.
So Eric's going to play a Torrential Gearhulk. He's going to play Essence Scatter. And still has mana if he wants. Yep. To go explore the Sunken Ruins. Finds another copy of Essence Scatter. Wow.
And we know he has a negate in hand also, so the bases are covered here.
He has another Torrential Gearhulk in hand as well. And now Eric has navigated this game to a point where he's able to attack Andrew and start working on his life total. Search for Escanta. Now, is that a card that if it sticks and flips, Andrew can sort of fight his way back into this game?
Andrew doesn't necessarily have enough time at this point, though earlier that's definitely exactly the kind of card that he would have wanted to get back into this game. Eric also has Field of Ruin, so he has a nice answer to it already on the battlefield. And that's one of the reasons why Blue-Black Control generally does well against these Grixis energy decks, is that they get the opportunity to play Field of Ruin to fight Escanta the Sunken Ruin, whereas the Grixis energy deck, its mana is too taxing for it to play a card that produces colorless like that.
So negate gets drawn out by the search for Escanta. Eric casts. Very nice. Eric casts Hieroglyphic Illumination in response and then activates the land to sacrifice the Temple of Aklazats.
Yeah, I was going to say the temple because I will not dare attempt to pronounce the third word of that card's name.
It's Aklazats. A closets? I don't know, maybe it's a closets.
So Eric there.
You see the hand from Andrew. I mean, just crushed underneath the boot heel of the Blue-Black Control deck. Just a pretty dominant showing by that deck, and you see why Eric is 11-1 now and in great shape heading down to the last couple rounds here in the Swiss.
Yeah, Eric also, he made short work of Andrew Tenjum there. That's kind of a control mirror, and only 20 minutes deep into the match, and they've already played 2 games.
Yeah. We're going to get a chance to hear from Eric Froehlich. We'll talk to him maybe a little bit about some of the differences between this Blue-Black Control deck and the Blue-Black midrange deck. And, it's very rare that you told that story about Eric being sort of lured out of the house by the temptation to play Magic. So let's see what Eric has to say. Hey, Eric, BDM and Jake here. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
We heard a story that you liked Standard enough that you were willing to book a last-minute trip to Memphis.
Who started that nasty rumor?
Your wife.
No, I tweeted that. Yeah, no. Yeah, Standard. Man, I've been playing Magic a really long time. You're well aware of that. But I've definitely come in and out of trying to figure out, why I love the game, how much I want to travel, what I'm going to do, and definitely felt a little bit burned out playing some formats I wasn't a huge fan of. And with the rivals coming in, with the bannings in Standard, I just had to test a little bit of Standard for the Magic Online Championship Series. I'm like, wow, this is fun. I'm enjoying these games. There's lots of interaction. There's lots of decks, which is what a lot of people love about Modern, but also your sideboard cards are relevant. It's not like, if you play against Tron and Affinity and Lantern and Boggles and Storm, the sideboard cards just don't overlap. And so, you can do things to show up your matchups. Your decisions really matter. What cards you put in your deck mean a lot. And so I was just having a really good time. The games were interactive. I wasn't necessarily winning a huge percentage of them. So it wasn't just like, oh, yeah, you're winning a lot, so you're enjoying it. It's like, no, I was losing a lot. But I was really having fun with that. I think the Standard format is the best we've had in as long as I can remember right now.
Now, Blue-Black Control is a deck that speaks to a lot of players who've been playing the game a long time, as you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. What was it about this deck that really made your decision to play it in this tournament? What was the deciding factor for you?
You get to play a lot of powerful cards. You get to play a lot of instants. You get the black removal spells, we know how good they are. And the Blue-Black mid-range deck is actually the deck I kind of thought about playing the most. And cards like Glimmer of Genius and having, Disallows in your deck and a bunch of Gear Hulks, like that's some really powerful stuff against the other mid-range decks, and you get to play a lot of removal spells, which are good against the aggressive decks, and so you still lose a decent percentage of the games, especially when you're on the draw and they have a good draw. It doesn't really matter how many Fatal Pushes and moments you have. Like, you still end up losing a lot of those games, but it feels like how you sequence things and the spells you play actually matter, and so I'm not convinced that Blue-Black Control is the best deck. Far from convinced. I think that there's a lot of really good decks in Standard, and when I booked the ticket, I was actually, because I was so excited about playing Red-Green Monsters, actually. That was the deck I played in the mocks, and I was having a lot of fun with it. And the blue-black decks, I think, have a pretty decent matchup against it, and that deck was becoming popular. And red decks are hard for everyone to beat consistently, so I ended up going with Blue-Black Control. But I think that it's kind of like Modern again. Like, any deck that you really enjoy playing, I think is a totally reasonable choice. I don't advocate for any one of them right now.
So in game one there, I saw you and Andrew both had Search for Azcanta.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the big deciding factor of the game was the fact that you had access to Field of Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a factor do you think Field of Ruin is in terms of whether or not you're playing a 2-color and or a 3-color control deck in this format?
That's a great question. I think that Field of Ruin is a great card. Whether your 3-color decks can support playing however many of them, I don't know. Like, I haven't really tried. I haven't gotten deep enough into figuring out Standard to start figuring out the mana bases of all the decks. And so I've seen quite a number of the 3-color decks that do play some number of Field of Ruin. But that was definitely a part of my decision-making process, that I'm playing 4 Field of Ruin and playing a 2-color deck. And, it kind of is a more expensive Evolving Wilds. It's kind of a more expensive Revolt Enabler. But, with these enchantments that flip into really powerful lands, like, it's a great card.
All right, well, Eric, you're having a great day. Good weekend so far. Good luck the rest of the way. Hopefully we get to talk to you a couple more times.
Yeah, I'm well on track to 11-4 right now at 11-1, so I like my
You
chances.
did call that shot early, so yeah, nice job there.
Yeah,
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, always fun to talk to Eric about Magic. I mean, he is really got one of the great minds for the game and is just always thinking about it and has been doing it for multiple decades now. So always great to see him still excited and doing well at the game. We got some more Magic to show you, but first we've got some ads, and we'll be right back right after those.